I was working at a cafe in Paris when an American woman asked me why we were closed on Sunday. I told her it's our day off. The whole staff gets Sunday to rest. She looked at me like I'd just spoken in ancient Greek. "But what if people want coffee?" she asked. I said they can make it at home or go somewhere else. She said that was the most unreasonable thing she'd ever heard. A business closing so workers could rest. She actually used the word lazy. I told her that in France, most small shops close on Sundays. It's protected by law. Workers have a right to rest. She shook her head and said, "In America, we work 7 days a week because that's what customers need." I didn't know how to tell her that customers aren't more important than human beings. My friend worked at a hotel in Norway. An American guest called the front desk at 10 at night, angry that all the restaurants nearby were closed. It was a Tuesday. My friend explained that most restaurants close by 9 on weekdays because staff need to go home. The guest said, "Then how are people supposed to eat?" My friend suggested the grocery store. The guest said grocery stores aren't open at 10 p.m. either, are they? My friend said no. They close at 8. The guest went silent for a long time, then said, "So what do Norwegians do at night?" My friend said, "Sleep, spend time with family, relax." The guest genuinely could not understand this. Another co-worker in Stockholm told me about an American couple who got frustrated that stores closed at 6 p.m. on Saturdays. They wanted to go shopping after dinner, but everything was shut down. They asked why Sweden hates business. My co-worker explained that people need time off. Employees have lives outside of work. The couple said that was a communist mindset. These were people in their 30s, educated people. They could not process the idea that a store employee might want to see their kids before bedtime. I was on a train in Germany when I overheard 2 American tourists complaining that their Airbnb host wasn't answering messages at 11 p.m. They'd sent 6 messages asking about the Wi-Fi password. One of them said, "Customer service is dead in Europe." The other agreed. Said back home, people respond instantly no matter what time it is. I wanted to lean over and say, "That's because back home, people aren't allowed to stop being workers." A family friend worked at a spa in Switzerland. An American client got upset that her massage therapist took a lunch break in the middle of the day. The client had wanted to book back-to-back appointments and was told the therapist wouldn't be available from 12 to 1. She complained to management, said the therapist was uncommitted to customer satisfaction. Management told her that lunch breaks are mandatory by law. The client left a 1-star review online saying Switzerland doesn't understand hospitality. These stories aren't about travel confusion. They're about something deeper, something that shows how disconnected America has become from basic human needs. I studied abroad in Italy during college. One of my American classmates had a breakdown during the first week. Not because of the culture shock or homesickness, because everything closed from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. Shops, offices, even some museums. She couldn't understand it. She kept saying, "How does anything get done?" Our Italian professor explained it's called riposo, rest time. People go home, have lunch with their families, take a nap, recharge. Then they come back and work until 7 or 8 in the evening. My classmate said, "That's such a waste of productivity." The professor looked at her for a long moment and said, "Productivity for what? We work to live. We don't live to work." That didn't click for her. Even months later, she'd complain about it. She wanted coffee at 2 p.m. and couldn't understand why the cafe near our apartment was closed. I told her to make coffee at the apartment. She said that wasn't the point. The point was that businesses should be available when customers want them. I asked her if she'd want to work through lunch every single day with no break. She said, If that's what my job required, yes. Another American student in our program got into an argument with a local restaurant owner. He wanted to eat dinner at 5 p.m. The restaurant didn't open until 7:30. He said that was ridiculous, that Americans eat dinner at 5 or 6. The owner said, then Americans must go to bed very early like children. The student said, no, Americans just eat early and then keep working or running errands. The owner asked why anyone would want to live like that. The student didn't have an answer. My roommate from California was shocked that our landlord in Florence didn't respond to emails after 6 p.m. or on weekends. She'd email him on Saturday morning about a leaky faucet and get frustrated when he didn't reply until Monday. She said he was unprofessional. I said he was spending the weekend with his family. She said, he's a landlord. That's a full-time job. I said no. He owns 3 properties and works as an architect. Being a landlord is his side income. She said that was exactly why he should be more responsive. He's not busy enough to ignore emails. The landlord eventually told us that in Italy, work stays at work. When he's home, he's a father and a husband, not a landlord. My roommate said that was a luxury Americans couldn't afford. He said, it's not a luxury, it's a right. She rolled her eyes. I watched this happen over and over. Americans abroad getting frustrated that people weren't available 24/7. That stores had limited hours. That customer service workers didn't smile constantly or go above and beyond. That everything moved slower. There was a guy in our program who tried to go to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. The gym didn't open until 7. He complained to the staff when they finally opened, asked why they didn't have early morning hours for people who wanted to work out before work. The staff member said most people don't start work until 9, so 7 a.m. is early enough. The guy said, in America, real gyms open at 4 or 5 a.m. because people have discipline. The staff member said, in Italy, people sleep until they're rested because health is more important than performance. Another student tried to schedule a doctor's appointment on a Saturday. She was told the clinic is closed on weekends, except for emergencies. She said her shin splints were an emergency. The receptionist said, no, they're not. She could wait until Monday. The student argued for 10 minutes, said that in America, you can see a doctor any day of the week. The receptionist said, doctors are humans too. They have families. They rest. One girl in our group had a meltdown because she couldn't find a 24-hour pharmacy. She had a headache and wanted ibuprofen at midnight. I told her to wait until morning. She said waiting 8 hours with a headache was inhumane. I said taking ibuprofen at midnight and going right back to sleep seemed pointless anyway. She said I didn't understand American convenience culture. She was right. I didn't. The breaking point for a lot of students came during August. That's when Italians take vacation. Entire businesses shut down for 2 to 4 weeks. Restaurants, shops, even some banks. Everyone goes on holiday at the same time. The Americans in our program were outraged. They said it was bad for the economy, that customers needed access to services, that you can't just abandon your business for a whole month. Our professor said Italians have been doing this for generations, and their economy is fine. Better than fine, actually, because workers come back rested, creative, and motivated, not burned out. One student said, "But what about the customers?" The professor said, "The customers are also on vacation." That's when I realized something. Americans don't see rest as productive. They don't see family time as valuable. They don't see humanity as more important than availability. They've been trained to believe that being a good person means being a good worker. And being a good worker means never stopping. I have friends back home who brag about not taking vacation days, who work through lunch, who answer emails at 11 p.m. and feel proud of it. They think Europeans are lazy. They think we're entitled. They can't imagine a world where your worth isn't tied to your productivity. I worked at a bookstore in Amsterdam after I graduated. We had this regular customer, an American expat, who got visibly frustrated every time she came in. One day, she finally exploded at me. She said our checkout process was insanely slow. I asked what she meant. She said the cashiers talked too much. They asked customers about their day, made small talk, took their time bagging books. She said, "In America, cashiers scan your items and you leave. It takes 30 seconds. I told her that in the Netherlands, cashiers are encouraged to be friendly, to connect with customers. She said that was a waste of everyone's time, that people just want to buy their books and go. I said, maybe people also want to feel seen as human beings, not just transactions. She said I was being dramatic. That customer service is about efficiency, not feelings. I didn't argue with her, but I noticed she kept coming back to our slow bookstore instead of ordering online. My manager told me about an American woman who complained that our grocery store cashiers sat down while working. In the Netherlands, cashiers have chairs. They sit during their shifts because standing for 8 hours is terrible for your body. This woman said it looked unprofessional and lazy. My manager asked her why someone needs to stand to scan groceries. The woman didn't have an answer, but she doubled down, said sitting made it seem like the cashiers didn't care about their jobs. My manager said, they care about their jobs. That's why they're here. But they also care about their spines and their leg health. The woman said that in America, cashiers stand because it shows dedication. My manager said, in the Netherlands, we show dedication by treating workers like humans. I had a friend who worked at a restaurant in Copenhagen. She told me about an American couple who left a bad review because their server wasn't attentive enough. The server had checked on them twice during the meal, brought their food, asked if everything was okay, and brought the bill when requested. Apparently, that wasn't enough. The review said the server disappeared and didn't refill their water glasses every 5 minutes. My friend explained that in Denmark, servers leave you alone unless you signal for them. It's considered polite. Customers don't want to be interrupted every few minutes while they're eating and talking. The constant hovering that Americans expect is seen as intrusive in most of Europe. But this couple interpreted it as bad service. They wanted someone to perform attentiveness, even if it meant disrupting their meal. Another American tourist got upset at a cafe in Berlin because the barista didn't smile. Just took the order, made the coffee, handed it over. No, hi, how are you today? No, have a great day. The tourist told my coworker that the barista was rude. My coworker said the barista was perfectly polite, just not performatively cheerful. The tourist said that's the same as being rude, that service workers should make customers feel special. My coworker said, the barista made you a perfect coffee. That's her job. She doesn't owe you emotional labor on top of that. The tourist said that's exactly what customer service means. Emotional labor, making people feel good. My coworker said, she's a human being making €7 an hour, not your personal cheerleader. I saw this happen at my bookstore too. American customers would get uncomfortable when I didn't smile constantly. They'd ask if I was okay or if something was wrong. I'd say I was fine. They'd say I seemed upset. I'd say I was just neutral, existing, not performing happiness for strangers. They couldn't compute that. One woman asked to speak to my manager because I seemed annoyed with her. I wasn't annoyed. I was just scanning her books without theatrical enthusiasm. My manager asked her what I'd done wrong. She said I didn't smile or make eye contact enough. My manager said, she scanned your books correctly and wished you a good day. That's professional service. The woman said, in America, service workers are friendly. My manager said, in the Netherlands, service workers are people, not actors. There was an American guy who came into the bookstore once a week, always complained about something. One week, he said our store was too quiet. that we should play upbeat music to create energy. I told him we play soft classical music so people can browse peacefully. He said that was boring, that bookstores should feel exciting and fast-paced. I asked him why a bookstore should feel fast-paced. He said because that's what keeps customers engaged. I said people come here to slow down and think? He said that's old-fashioned. That modern retail is about stimulation. I said maybe constant stimulation is exhausting. He looked at me like I'd suggested we burn books for warmth. Another customer got frustrated that we didn't have a loyalty rewards program. She'd bought 4 books in 2 months and wanted points or discounts. I told her we're a small independent shop. We don't do corporate rewards programs. She said every bookstore in America has one. I said that's because American bookstores are mostly chains owned by corporations. She said that was better, more professional. I asked her what was more professional about it. She said rewards programs make customers feel valued. I said, we remember your name. We recommend books based on what you like. We order titles for you when they're not in stock. That's how we make you feel valued. She said that wasn't the same. She wanted points she could track, something quantifiable. That's when I understood. Americans don't trust human connection. They trust systems. They'd rather have an app tracking their loyalty than a person remembering their face. They'd rather have a scripted interaction than a genuine one. They've been taught that real connection is inefficient. I had a coworker in Brussels who told me about an American friend visiting her. The friend had a panic attack on the second day because she couldn't get food delivered at 2 in the morning. She'd tried 4 different apps. Everything was closed. She called my coworker, genuinely distressed, saying she didn't know what to do. My coworker said, "There's food in my kitchen. Make a sandwich." The friend said she didn't want a sandwich. She wanted real food. My coworker said the kitchen had pasta, eggs, vegetables, everything needed to cook a meal. The friend said she didn't know how to cook. She was 28 years old. My coworker asked what she normally ate in America. The friend said she ordered delivery or picked up takeout every single day, sometimes 3 times a day. She hadn't cooked a meal in years, didn't even know how to boil pasta. My coworker was stunned. She said, "How is that possible? How do you survive?" The friend said, "Delivery apps. Everything's available 24/7. That's when my coworker realized this wasn't about laziness. This was about a system that had made basic human skills obsolete. Americans had outsourced so much of their lives to convenience, services that they'd forgotten how to do things themselves. Another friend in London told me about her American roommate who had a breakdown because Amazon delivery took 3 days instead of 1. 3 days! The roommate had ordered phone chargers and acted like she was stranded on a desert island. My friend said, "You can buy a charger at any electronics store." The roommate said she didn't want to go to a store. That was the whole point of online shopping. My friend said, "The store is 10 minutes away." The roommate said walking 10 minutes. Finding the item, waiting in line, and walking back would take at least 30 minutes. My friend said, "Yes, 30 minutes. That's not a long time." The roommate said it was inefficient. That Amazon should deliver things faster. My friend asked what she would do with the extra 27 minutes saved by not going to the store. The roommate said she'd be more productive. My friend said, "Productive at what?" The roommate didn't have an answer. I saw this constantly when Americans visited Amsterdam. They'd get frustrated that grocery delivery wasn't instant, that restaurants didn't deliver everywhere, that you had to actually walk to places instead of having everything brought to you. One guy staying at a hostel complained to me that he had to walk 4 blocks to the nearest supermarket. 4 blocks, less than 5 minutes. He said that in his city in America, he could order groceries and have them delivered in under an hour. I said that's great, but walking 4 blocks is also fine. He said it wasn't about whether it was fine. It was about unnecessary effort. I said, "Walking 4 blocks is unnecessary effort?" He said yes. That technology exists to eliminate that effort, so why not use it? I said maybe walking is good for you. He said he goes to the gym for that. I said going to the gym requires effort too. He said that's different. That's intentional exercise. Walking to the store is just wasted time. Another American woman got upset that our local bakery didn't have an app. She wanted to order ahead and pick up her pastries without waiting. I told her the bakery is tiny, family-owned. You walk in, point at what you want, and they hand it to you. Takes 90 seconds. She said that wasn't the point. She wanted to optimize her morning routine. I asked what she was optimizing for. She said efficiency. I asked what she'd do with the 45 seconds saved by ordering ahead. She said it wasn't about the time. It was about reducing friction. I said, talking to a baker is friction? She said any unnecessary human interaction is friction. That hit me hard. She genuinely saw human interaction as an obstacle to overcome. I had an American visitor at my bookstore ask if we had a self-checkout option. I said no. We have one register with one person. She sighed and said she hated talking to cashiers. I asked why. She said it slowed things down. I said our transaction would take less than a minute. She said even a minute adds up over time. I rang up her books in 40 seconds. She looked surprised. I said, see? Faster than complaining about it. She didn't laugh. My manager told me about an American customer who wanted us to ship a book to his hotel instead of just carrying it back himself. The hotel was 3 blocks away. He said he didn't want to carry a book around the city. My manager said it's one book, not a refrigerator. He said he traveled light and didn't want extra weight. My manager said the book weighed less than a pound. He insisted on shipping. My manager said shipping would cost more than the book itself. He said that was fine. He just didn't want to carry it. My manager asked if he'd carry it from the hotel lobby to his room. He said yes, but that was different. My manager asked how. He didn't have an answer, but he still paid for shipping. A girl from Texas told me she couldn't believe Europeans still used cash. She said it was so outdated. I said a lot of places prefer cash because it's faster and has no transaction fees. She said card is faster. I said counting cash takes 5 seconds. She said 5 seconds is too long. That contactless payment takes 1 second. I said, you're worried about a 4-second difference? She said yes. That seconds add up over a lifetime. I said maybe living isn't about saving seconds. She said that was a privileged mindset, that efficiency gives people more time for what matters. I asked what mattered to her. She said scrolling TikTok. I moved back to the US last year after 6 years in Europe. The reverse culture shock hit me harder than I expected. Not because America was unfamiliar, because I'd forgotten how exhausting it is to live here. Everything's open all the time, but nothing feels alive. You can get anything delivered, but you never see your neighbors. Customer service workers smile constantly, but their eyes look dead. Everyone's productive, but nobody seems happy. I went to a grocery store at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday. It was packed. People shopping after work, after the gym, after putting kids to bed. I thought about those late nights in Amsterdam when everything was closed and the streets were quiet, when people were home with their families, resting. I asked a cashier how she was doing. She said, living the dream, in the most sarcastic tone I've ever heard. She'd been on her feet for 7 hours, had another hour to go. I asked if she got a chair. She laughed, said chairs are for lazy people. I wanted to tell her that chairs are for humans, but I knew it wouldn't matter. My friend invited me to dinner at 6 p.m. I said that was early. She said she had to be in bed by 9 because she wakes up at 4:30 for the gym before work. I asked when she relaxed. She said she relaxes by being productive. I didn't know what to say to that. I went to a coffee shop on Saturday morning. Every single person was on a laptop, working on a Saturday. I was the only one just drinking coffee and reading. The barista asked if I was waiting for someone. I said no. She looked confused. Said most people don't just sit anymore. A coworker asked me how I could afford to take 2 weeks off for vacation. I said I just requested the time and saved up for the trip. She said she hadn't taken a vacation in 3 years. I asked why. She said she couldn't fall behind. I asked behind what? She didn't have an answer. That's what America's become. A country where people have forgotten how to be human. where rest is lazy, where connection is inefficient, where every moment has to be optimized for productivity. I watched an American tourist in Paris once, sitting at a cafe, scrolling through her phone while the Eiffel Tower sparkled behind her. She didn't look up once. Someone asked her later if she'd enjoyed Paris. She said it was fine, but the Wi-Fi was slow. That's the saddest part. Americans travel the world and miss it completely. Because they're too busy checking emails, too busy staying productive, too busy being available. They've forgotten what it feels like to just exist, to sit without purpose, to talk without efficiency, to live without performing. And the worst part? Most of them don't even know what they've lost. These stories keep coming, and they're not funny anymore.